Everyone knew that whoever let the sadness overtake him would sink into the swamp.
Doing fine, you're sinking! Come on! Turn around! You have to now! Come on! Attack! Fight against the sadness vortex!
Well, friends, here we are, back in the swamps, but not any old swamp, the swamps of sadness. You know the place, the iconic place from one of the greatest children's films of all time. And unfortunately, many of us know this place in a real personal, figurative sense in our daily lives. When I made my previous video on modular swamps, they were full of all sorts of little fun objects and bits, and I made an offhand joke about including a sinking horse. I didn't have it in me at the time to be that cruel and surprise trigger so much childhood trauma in my viewers that share my age group. But so many people responded with comments that I should totally do it that it became a must-build project for me. The big problem is that if I were to do it, I didn't want to just grab some random horse and have it sinking in the mud. I wanted to treat this unforgettable scene with the respect it deserved. It needed the right horse, and it needed to have a friend named Atreyu trying to save him. So when my pals at Dragon Trapper's Lodge asked to collaborate on another video and told me that their theme for the month was swamps, and asked if I wanted anything special made to fit the set, I immediately knew what it had to be. I needed a proper Atreyu and Artax model so I could bring this scene to life. The build here is not really any different than the previous swamp pieces I made, so if you want to see those steps in more detail, I highly suggest you go check out that other swamp video. But on this one, there were some things that I went about a little differently. I added black paint to my sculpt mold. This was to test to see if it would react badly, and thankfully it didn't. The real big advantage to doing this is that if the sculpt mold were ever to chip in the future, it would just reveal a dark gray spot rather than a bright white spot that would be super obvious on a dark bit of terrain. And compared to my first piece in the set, this one has a lot more height to it with the tall branches, and I really love that. This provided a great place to hang some weird swamp stuff. And for that, I just used some tree foliage from Woodland Scenics and some Halloween spider webs doused in watered down Mod Podge. The other different thing this time around was not priming. Normally I would never consider doing this, but I figured going right over top all the great natural looking textures of the various twigs, branches, and foliage would probably create a really nice look. And since I had tinted that sculpt mold already, I could actually get away with doing this. I really like the way this worked, and despite going really heavy with the inks, I think I'm onto something here for certain types of projects. I'd never skip priming on a lot of materials like plastic or any terrain that you might handle a lot, but in this case, it worked really well. And some people don't like this really monotone silhouette style terrain, but in my opinion, those people are wrong. Okay, no, I'm kidding. You like what you like, and personally, I just really love this style, and that's what matters. The build was ready for its crown jewel, the Artax and Atreyu model. So now's the perfect time to tell you all about the folks that made this project possible, Dragon Trappers Lodge. They make unique models that you can print at home, and their style is highly centered around anthropomorphic characters. They're really the best in the game at this. The theme this month is swamps, and it's full of pre-supported kick-ass models, including this massive tortoise model that has an option to be carrying a shack. It's ridiculous in all the right ways. And as a bonus this month, they're giving their patrons a copy of the NeverEnding story model that I had them make for me so that you can create this scene yourself. But what about all the people that don't have 3D printers? The ones that can never take advantage of these great sponsors? Well, Dragon Trappers Lodge has you covered. They've added a budget tier so that you can just get paper minis that you can print on your normal home printer. Pretty cool. Their Patreon also includes a bunch of supplemental material like maps, stat blocks, new classes, and all sorts of fun stuff. And they're now offering 75mm scale versions of their models for display painters. And they now offer a crazy tier where you can have them make your very own custom mini, and you get access to every model they've ever made. And best of all, they're now offering yearly memberships on all their tiers with a 16% discount. I'll put a link in the video description so you can check them out for yourself. Despite this model being a very small part of this build, it's by far the most important part, and I wanted to do it well. I'm pretty sure I spent about 10 times longer painting these two half characters than I did building and painting the entire scene. I made good use of zenithal priming and GW contrast paints. The more I use these paints and learn how to use them in a controlled fashion, the more they become a really valuable tool for me. They really do make it possible to get nice shading with very minimal effort. And because these models were so small and delicate, I didn't want to use my new obsession, which is oil washes on them. I was concerned that the cleanup and removal process would be a bit too heavy-handed on these really delicate tiny models. So instead, I just took my time, but still relied on kind of a cheating approach with the contrast paints. I'm particularly pleased with how the horse, Artax, turned out. Painting a white horse isn't the easiest thing to do, and I think I pulled it off pretty well. And I even managed to give him some nice little kind of realistic horsey eyes, so yeah, good for me. I was really nervous removing the model from the double-sided tape. I did not want to accidentally snap the reins between the two characters. This would have been devastating. But with care, they came off nicely and I could super glue them in place. It was then time for the epoxy that I both love and hate. I feel like this epoxy is like the other character on this channel. It's like my co-host at this point. You know, this stuff is from the dollar store. It cures really fast and it's really cheap, but it's not 100% reliable. Then again, no resin or epoxy is 100% reliable. There's always a chance of a failed cure. That's just something you have to live with. But to increase my chances of success, I made sure to mix up more than I needed to get everything done in one pour. I made sure not to over thin it with too much alcohol, and I was very restrained with the black contrast paint that I added to tint it. I was also incredibly careful when spreading the epoxy around not to get it globbed up on the character models, as this would really kind of kill the whole thing. And thankfully the pour went really well and I didn't get any nasty reactions ruining the project, so that was good. But I did find that the transitions from the fairly thick epoxy to the dry land looked a bit off. This swamp could really use some more kind of gloss all over and a bit of wet texture on top of everything. So I applied a coat of gloss Mod Podge to the whole piece. Now this is a commonly used technique for adding ripples to water effects. It's well tested and well established in the modeling world. But I made a crucial error in my application. I applied it with a brush using a stippling technique, and it turns out that can create a bunch of bubbles and Mod Podge kind of foam that gets locked in place as it dries. This resulted in a lot of white foamy areas all over. Now this wouldn't be a problem if this was like a river or a seashore, but it wasn't quite right for a mucky, dark swamp. Thankfully, a quick glaze of inks tinted these white areas enough to hide them, and I could breathe a sigh of relief that I didn't didn't ruin this thing on the last step. I'm really proud of this build. I think it captures the scene really well, and the build process was very cathartic for dealing with my own traumatic memories of this movie, as well as my own personal fight treading water in the swamps of sadness. I feel like at this point in the video, a lot of people have already left comments with the fun fact that the horse in the movie actually died during filming this scene. But I want you all to know, if you believe this myth like I once did, that it's totally false. It's not true. The horse was well trained and well treated during the filming of the scene, and it was completely safe. And after the movie wrapped up, he lived a long, happy life for over 20 years on a beautiful ranch. So that makes this scene a little less traumatizing.
We were never meant to be, so we act as if we just don't care. And no, we were never meant to see that we're running out of hair. Oh, we were never meant to be, so we act as if we just don't care.
I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button, let me know in the comments section below. Feel free to share it with your favorite hobby group. Don't forget to check out my essential equipment page on blackmagicraft.ca. And of course, if you want to support this channel, the best way you can do that is by supporting the channel on Patreon. Cheers.